Daniel pushed the mop across the shining floor, his back bent, shoulders tired, but no one looked at him. People walked past as if he was part of the wall. His shirt was worn, his shoes old, and his hands rough from scrubbing day after day. The massive alien corporate tower buzzed with life above him. Executives in fine robes, translators running with glowing tablets, alien guards standing tall with polished weapons. But Daniel was only a shadow among them. A single father trying to earn just enough to feed his little girl at home. No one cared who he was. To them, he was just the janitor who wiped their mess. The great hall glittered with alien symbols etched in glass walls. Strange voices echoed from the meeting chamber, deep and sharp, filled with words most humans never understood. Executives with tall, scaled bodies and jeweled crests on their heads spoke with authority, their alien language flowing like a hidden river. Humans in the tower usually pretended not to hear. They could not understand, and if they tried, they risked punishment. But Daniel listened. Every day, as he pushed his mop and cleaned the corners, he listened. And though they did not know, every sound, every phrase, every hidden meaning had been carved into his mind over years of quiet study. His daughter's face came to his thoughts as he worked. She was small, fragile, her cheeks pale from illness. He had promised her medicine, but his pay was too little. He had begged for extra shifts, but the supervisors only sneered. "You are lucky you even have this job," they had said. That night, holding his daughter as she coughed, he swore he would find a way. That oath followed him into the tower every morning, burning in his chest as strong as hunger. Two executives entered the hall while he was mopping, their voices sharp and private. They spoke in their language, their tones dripping with arrogance. They thought the janitor could not hear them. They thought he was deaf to their schemes. Daniel bent lower, scrubbing near their boots, pretending to ignore, but his ears caught everything. He froze when he understood their words. They were not only discussing profit, they were speaking of humans, calling them weak, disposable, even useful as slaves for expansion. Their laughter filled the hall, cold and cruel, echoing against the crystal walls. Daniel's hands tightened around the mop handle. He told himself to stay silent. He told himself to just keep his head down. But something inside him cracked. He thought of his daughter's small hands, her voice calling Papa. He thought of the future these aliens planned, a future where humans like her would live as property. His heart pounded. His lips trembled. And before he realized it, he spoke. The words came out in perfect alien tongue. His voice was calm, clear, and sharp enough to cut through the chamber air. "Perhaps you should choose your words more carefully," he said. "Some ears hear more than you think." The sound of a mop hitting the floor echoed as he let the handle slip. Both executives stopped mid-step. Their eyes, glowing with shock, turned to him. Their mouths hung open, jaws frozen wide. Silence spread across the hall as if time itself had paused. Nearby clerks dropped their tablets, guards turned their heads, and even the hum of machines felt quieter. No human was supposed to speak those words. No janitor was supposed to understand. Yet here was Daniel, the man they ignored, speaking like a scholar born among them. One of the executives hissed, the ridges on his head trembling. "You? How?" His voice faltered. The other narrowed her eyes, studying Daniel as if he had suddenly grown into a different creature. This was not just a man with a mop. This was a man who had trespassed into their deepest guarded culture. Their language was not taught to outsiders, not written for human eyes, not shared across the stars. And yet this janitor spoke it as if it had always lived on his tongue. Daniel bent and picked up the mop again, though his hand shook slightly. His heart thundered in his chest, but he kept his expression plain. He dipped the mop into the bucket, the water rippling, and said nothing more. Inside, he felt a storm brewing, but outside, he was only the janitor, silent, invisible, unimportant. Or at least, that was what he had been until this moment. Around him, whispers grew. A clerk ran to another, hissing in fear. The humans spoke our words. Guards tightened their grips on weapons, unsure if this was trick or sorcery. One alien woman stared in awe, unable to blink. The hall that had once ignored Daniel now watched him with wide eyes. The air grew thick with tension, the kind that bends spines and dries throats. Daniel did not need to look up to know every gaze was fixed on him. He wrung the mop slowly, water dripping onto the clean floor. His ears burned with the silence pressing down. He could hear his own breathing, steady but loud, like a drum. He thought again of his daughter, waiting for him in their small, dark home. He wondered if he had made a mistake, if speaking those words would cost him everything. Yet deep inside, he also felt a strange spark, like the first light of fire in a long night. For years, he had been nobody. For years, he had been invisible. But in that single moment, he had broken the silence of chains. The executive stepped closer, towering above him. One leaned forward, his voice low but trembling. "Say it again. Speak those words again." The order hung in the air, sharp with suspicion and fear. Daniel lifted his head just slightly, meeting their gaze without flinching. His lips curled into the faintest shadow of a smile, though his heart raced faster than ever. He did not speak again. He did not need to. The truth was already out, and nothing in that tower would ever be the same. The story of the janitor spread faster than fire on dry grass. By morning, every corner of the alien tower buzzed with whispers. Workers who had never spoken his name now pointed at him from a distance. Humans cleaning the corridors stared with wide eyes, half in fear and half in hope. Even aliens who once looked through him now slowed their steps when he passed, their eyes sharp and suspicious. "The janitor spoke," they muttered. "A human spoke our tongue." Daniel felt every gaze like a weight pressing down on his back as he pushed his mop across the endless shining floors. Guards began to appear where they never had before. They followed him down the hallways, silent but watchful, their hands resting on weapons. Clerks stepped aside when he walked near, whispering into their glowing tablets, sending messages to superiors. Daniel tried to keep his head low, moving his mop as if nothing had changed, but he could feel it. Everything had changed. He was no longer invisible. He was being hunted by eyes that waited for him to make one mistake. At night, when he returned home, his daughter noticed his silence. She tugged at his sleeve and asked, "Papa, why do you look scared?" Daniel smiled weakly, smoothing her hair, but the truth burned inside him. How could he explain that speaking one sentence in the wrong place could destroy them both? He only kissed her forehead and told her stories of strength, but his mind raced with worry. He had revealed too much. The next day, he was summoned. A message came not through a kind voice, but through two guards who waited at the base of his cleaning station. "You are ordered," one of them growled, pointing with a clawed hand. Daniel wiped his palms on his old trousers and followed. The hallway they led him through was long and silent, decorated with glowing alien symbols carved into the walls. He had never been allowed this deep into the tower. The closer they walked, the more he felt as if the walls themselves pressed inward. The chamber they entered was vast, the ceiling stretching so high it disappeared into shadows. Tall alien executives sat in curved thrones, their eyes bright with suspicion. Their voices filled the air like hissing flames. They spoke not to him at first, but among themselves, their language twisting fast and sharp, testing if he would react. Daniel lowered his eyes, standing still, but he understood every word. They argued whether he was dangerous, whether he had stolen sacred knowledge, or whether he should be executed before the secret spread. Finally, one of them addressed him directly. His scaled face gleamed under the lights, his teeth sharp as daggers. "Where did you learn our speech?" The question thundered through the chamber. The guards behind Daniel shifted, ready for any sudden move. Daniel felt his mouth go dry, but he raised his chin. He remembered the nights of struggle, working long hours, then returning home to care for his sick daughter, then reading in secret while she slept. He remembered the alien scrolls he had found discarded in the trash of the tower, scrolls no one thought a janitor could even recognize. He remembered whispering each word into the dark, shaping sounds until they became music in his mouth. "I learned," he said calmly, "because I listened." His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "Every day, every hour, while you spoke above me as if I was not there, I heard. Your words were not hidden. They fell like dust, and I gathered them. I studied when my child slept. I learned because knowledge is not only yours." His words echoed, and for a long moment, silence reigned. Some executives leaned back, their ridges trembling in disbelief. Others leaned forward, their eyes narrowing, as though weighing whether to admire him or condemn him. One hissed, "No human should speak what you speak. It is forbidden." Another growled, Perhaps he is a spy. Perhaps he is trained by enemies. Daniel's fists clenched, but he forced himself to remain still. I am not a spy, he said. I am a father. His voice cracked slightly at the word, but he pushed on. I learned because survival left me no choice. If knowledge is forbidden to humans, then why does it live in my mouth? The chamber erupted into harsh voices, each executive speaking at once. Some demanded punishment, others demanded more proof. Guards stepped closer to him, their shadows falling long across the polished floor. Daniel stood frozen, but inside he felt both fear and fire. He had not wanted this. He had wanted only medicine, only safety for his child. But now he stood in a place where his voice had power, and power was dangerous. When the session ended, they did not release him. They warned him that his steps would be watched, that every word from his mouth would be measured. As he left the chamber, the guard's eyes burned into his back. Outside, workers scattered to make room, whispering louder than ever. The janitor spoke to the council. He survived. Daniel returned to his station, but the mop in his hand felt heavier than ever. His heart refused to calm. He could not shake the image of his daughter waiting at home, fragile and unaware of the storm building around them. He knew the aliens did not see a father. They saw a threat, a tool, or a problem to erase. Still, he walked forward, his steps slow but firm. Every glance followed him. Every whisper carried his name. For the first time in his life, he was no longer invisible. And that made him more vulnerable than ever. The council did not leave Daniel alone for long. By the next sunrise, a summons arrived again, this time not from guards, but from an executive himself. His voice was sharp, filled with authority, demanding Daniel's presence in the great hall before the crowd. Daniel's hands trembled as he held the message. He knew this was no simple call. It was a test, and failure could cost him more than his own life. His daughter's face rose in his thoughts. He whispered a quiet promise to her empty bed, promising he would return. Then he walked into the storm. The great hall was crowded beyond measure. Humans lined the edges, cleaning staff who had heard rumors and wanted proof. Aliens filled the seats, their scales shining, their eyes glowing in the dim light. A massive throne stood at the center, and in front of it, the council members sat in a half circle. Daniel was ordered to stand in the middle, where the light poured down like fire, exposing him for all to see. He felt like a prisoner standing in a pit, surrounded by judges who waited for him to stumble. An executive with golden ridges stood tall, his voice booming. "You claim to understand our speech," he said. "Then show us. Translate what I say." His mouth opened, releasing a flood of words, strange, twisted, filled with ancient rhythm. The crowd leaned forward, their bodies tense. Even some of the younger aliens shifted nervously. Many of them did not know what the old words meant. It was not the common tongue used in trade. This was the language of ancestors, preserved in scrolls and chants, words passed down in secret. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, hearing each syllable. The words cut deep, but he had studied them before in silence, hidden in the dark while his daughter slept. He remembered tracing alien letters on scraps of paper, repeating lines until his throat burned. Now, he opened his mouth, his voice steady. He spoke in human words, but the meaning flowed true. The river may dry, the mountain may crumble, but the promise of blood will endure. The hall shook with gasps. The younger aliens turned to one another in disbelief. Some muttered that not even they knew the proverb's meaning. Daniel continued, his tone calm. "It is a lesson," he explained, "that strength fades, land breaks, but loyalty of kin must never be betrayed." The silence was thick. The golden-ridged executive stared at him, his eyes flashing with surprise and anger. Around the chamber, whispers spread like wind. "He not only knows the words," one alien muttered, "he knows the heart behind them." Others shook their heads, calling it impossible, claiming he must have stolen secret scrolls. But none could deny the truth in what they had heard. Another executive leaned forward, her eyes narrow and curious. She spoke in a different dialect, one rarely used, fast and sharp. The sound made some of the guards flinch. "If you understand, then speak this." Daniel listened carefully, his heart pounding. It was a phrase he had heard only once, whispered by an elder alien who thought no human could understand. Slowly, carefully, he translated. "The seed buried in darkness will one day rise to light." This time, there was no gasp. There was silence, heavier than stone. The woman's eyes widened slightly, not with anger, but with something else. Respect, perhaps, or fear. Daniel stood tall, though sweat ran down his back. His voice did not shake. He had no choice but to be perfect. One mistake could end him. The crowd erupted in mixed voices. Some aliens accused him loudly of being dangerous. Others demanded proof of how he learned. Human workers at the edges watched with glowing eyes, their hearts lifting as if they had witnessed a miracle. For years, they had been ignored, treated as lesser, but now one of their own stood in the middle of power, speaking with the tongue of rulers. Daniel kept his eyes forward, meeting the stares of the council. He did not bow, though every part of him wanted to bend under the weight of their gaze. He remembered nights when hunger had gnawed at him, when his daughter's cough had broken his heart, when he thought he was worthless. Now those same nights had brought him here, giving him strength that no one expected. The golden-ridged executive finally hissed, his voice like broken glass. This human is dangerous. Knowledge that belongs to us is not for his kind. We should cut out his tongue before it spreads further. Guards stepped forward, ready to seize him. But another voice rang out, sharp and commanding. It was the woman who had tested him with the rare dialect. She stood slowly, her robes glittering under the light. "No," she said firmly. "The human has proven himself. Knowledge cannot be undone, nor silenced. If he has learned, then it is because we were careless. Blame not the student for mastering what the teacher left unguarded." The hall grew still again. The two executives glared at each other, tension heavy in the air. Daniel stood between them, his chest rising and falling with slow breaths. He knew his fate was being decided not by his words now, but by their pride. At last, the woman turned to Daniel. Her eyes softened for a moment, though her tone remained sharp. "You are no ordinary janitor, but tread carefully. Every step you take from now will be watched." She raised her hand, signaling the guards to step back. Daniel's legs felt heavy as he left the hall, the whispers chasing him down the corridor. His heart thundered, his mind racing. He had passed their test, but not with safety. He had only moved deeper into danger. Behind him in the chamber, some aliens plotted against him, while others began to wonder if he could be useful. And somewhere above, in shadows of power, unseen eyes had already chosen him for something greater. That night, Daniel walked home through the dark streets, the air heavy with a strange silence. The city lights of the alien tower glowed above like a giant eye, watching his every step. He felt the presence of guards in the shadows, their sharp eyes following him. His daughter was waiting at home, and when she saw him, she ran into his arms. For a moment, the fear in his chest eased. She laughed, but he could not. His mind was trapped in the memory of the council chamber, of the voices that had called him dangerous. He knew life would never be the same. As he placed food on the table, a soft knock echoed at the door. His daughter looked up curiously, but Daniel's heart sank. No one ever visited them. He opened the door cautiously, and there she stood, the alien woman from the council, the one who had defended him. Her tall figure filled the doorway, her silver eyes shining in the dim light. Daniel froze, unsure if this was safety or another trap. She lifted her hand slowly, showing she came without guards. "I need to speak with you," she said in a low voice. Daniel stepped aside, letting her in, though every instinct screamed against it. His daughter hid behind him, clutching his shirt tightly. The alien woman's gaze softened as she noticed the child, but her tone remained serious. "You must listen carefully. What happened today cannot be erased. You have drawn the eyes of the council, and some of them wish to silence you forever. But others—" She paused, choosing her words. "Others see a chance in you, a chance they have been waiting for." Daniel frowned, his voice quiet. "A chance for what?" Her eyes locked on his. "For change, for something that has been forbidden for too long." She walked slowly across the small room, her robes brushing the floor, her presence filling the space with tension. "I have watched humans work as shadows in our towers, treated as if they are nothing. Yet you stand with knowledge, with words that belong only to us. You are proof that humans are more than they believe. That is why you are both dangerous and precious." Daniel's daughter tugged on his sleeve, whispering, "Papa, who is she?" He rested a hand on her head. "A friend, maybe." But inside, his chest tightened. He did not know if friend was the right word. The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I will not lie to you. If you continue as you are, they will destroy you. If you bow and stay silent, perhaps they will spare you, but you will live in chains again. Yet there is another path. She told him of hidden groups within the alien society, ones who believed their empire had grown weak from arrogance. They wanted unity, not dominance. They needed someone to stand between species, someone who could bridge the gap. You are that bridge, she said firmly. A janitor, yes, but also a father, a learner, a survivor. That makes you stronger than they know. Daniel's heart pounded. He thought of his daughter, her fragile body needing medicine and safety. He thought of the endless hours he had spent scrubbing floors, invisible to the world. Now this stranger wanted to pull him into a war of voices and power. He clenched his fists, shaking his head. I am not a leader. I am not a fighter. I only wanted to feed my child. The alien woman's expression softened, but her voice remained strong. And that is why you will succeed. Leaders who hunger for power always fall, but fathers who fight for their children never give up. That is why they fear you, Daniel. That is why I seek you tonight. He looked away, his throat tight. Through the window, he saw shadows moving in the street, the silent guards who never left. His daughter coughed softly, and the sound pierced him deeper than any blade. He wanted nothing but peace, yet peace had been taken from him the moment he spoke in the hall. Now danger hung over them both like a knife. The woman stepped back toward the door, pulling her hood over her head. Think on my words. You cannot run from what you have done. The choice will find you, even if you hide. She looked once more at his daughter, then at him. When the time comes, remember this. Silence is also a choice, and it has its price. Then she vanished into the night, leaving the door creaking in the cold wind. Daniel stood there for a long time, his daughter clinging to his arm. His chest felt heavy, his mind pulled in too many directions. He whispered to her softly, "It will be all right," though he did not believe it himself. He locked the door and lay awake long after she slept, staring at the ceiling, replaying the woman's words. The next morning, when he returned to the tower, the difference was clear. Guards stood near every corner, their eyes never leaving him. Workers whispered louder, some pointing openly now. Supervisors who once barked orders at him now spoke in hushed tones, as if afraid to anger him. But none of this was comfort. Every step he took was watched. Every mop stroke felt like walking a tightrope over fire. In the corner of his eye, Daniel noticed the same alien woman watching from a balcony above. She did not speak, but her presence was enough. Her words echoed inside him, pulling at the fear and fire in his chest. He wondered if she was right, if his life as a silent janitor had already ended the moment he spoke in their tongue. He wondered if his daughter's future now depended on choices he never wanted to make. When he returned home that evening, his daughter smiled as if nothing was wrong, asking him to tell her another story. Daniel forced a smile, but his mind raced. He could not tell her about the danger outside, nor about the offer whispered in their home. All he could do was hold her close, feeling the weight of her small body in his arms, and swear again to himself that no matter what path lay ahead, he would not let them take her from him. The day of the grand meeting came with thunder in the air. The tower was alive with motion, aliens dressed in ceremonial robes, humans rushing with trays and papers, guards lining every wall. Daniel had been ordered to attend, not as a worker, but as a participant. The message had been clear. He would serve as a translator before the full council and foreign dignitaries. If he failed, he would be punished. If he succeeded, he would still be marked. His daughter's face haunted him as he walked through the tall doors, her weak smile reminding him of the promise he could not break. The chamber was larger than anything Daniel had seen before. A glowing dome spread above, filled with moving stars that shimmered like the night sky. Alien leaders sat on high seats carved from crystal, while visitors from other worlds stood near the edges, their bodies strange and varied, their voices low and curious. At the center was a platform of light where Daniel was told to stand. His mop and bucket were gone. Now he carried only his voice. The first speaker, an alien dignitary with sharp horns and golden skin, stepped forward and began to speak. His words were fast, layered, filled with meaning meant to confuse. Daniel listened carefully, letting the sounds wash over him, breaking them apart in his mind. Then he spoke, his voice steady, delivering the words in clear human tongue. The crowd stirred as they realized the janitor truly could bridge the two worlds. Another dignitary spoke, this one slower, more deliberate, hiding venom in soft phrases. Daniel translated again, his words exact, leaving no space for doubt. Gasps rippled across the hall. He was flawless. The council shifted uneasily in their seats. For them, Daniel was no longer a shadow. He was a voice stronger than they had expected, and that made him dangerous. But as the talks continued, Daniel began to notice something strange. Certain phrases kept repeating, hidden inside formal greetings and polite words. At first, they seemed harmless, but as he listened deeper, he realized they formed a secret code. Piece by piece, it painted a picture. Plans for expansion, talk of humans being used not as workers, but as property, spoken so subtly that most would not notice. Daniel's chest grew tight as he translated, his mind screaming at him to stop. His daughter's face appeared in his thoughts again. Was this the future they planned for her? The final test came when one of the highest executives, the golden-ridged alien who despised him, rose from his seat. He spoke a long and twisting statement filled with riddles, ceremonial proverbs, and sharp words hidden inside. It was a trap. If Daniel failed, he would be called a liar. If he succeeded, he would reveal the council's true intent. All eyes in the hall fixed on him, waiting. Even the guards gripped their weapons tighter. Daniel's throat was dry, but he lifted his head. His voice carried steady through the chamber. He translated every word, each proverb, each sharp phrase, until he reached the hidden message. His hands trembled, his mind battling itself. Should he repeat the dark truth aloud? Should he risk the wrath of those who already hated him? Or should he protect himself and his daughter by staying silent? The silence of the hall pressed on him like a mountain. Humans at the edges watched with desperate eyes, their hearts tied to his every word. Aliens leaned forward, ready to pounce if he faltered. His daughter's cough echoed in his memory, and suddenly he knew he could not lie. He could not leave her future in chains. With a deep breath, Daniel spoke the final lines. And they planned to make humans serve as their slaves, hidden beneath the language of peace. His words cut like a blade, tearing the silence open. Gasps exploded across the hall. Some aliens shouted in anger, calling him a liar. Others turned to the golden-ridged executive, their faces twisted with shock. Guards stepped forward, surrounding Daniel, their weapons gleaming. The golden-ridged alien stood, his body shaking with fury. "This human twists our words," he roared. "He lies to sow rebellion." But Daniel's voice rose above the chaos. "I do not twist your words. I give them as you spoke them. Every worker here has heard you mock us. Every child will suffer if we stay silent. No more." The hall erupted. Some aliens demanded his execution at once, while others whispered that perhaps he spoke the truth. Human workers cried out in support, their voices breaking years of silence. For the first time, the walls of the chamber rang with the sound of unity, not just submission. The guards seized Daniel, dragging him to his knees, their weapons pressed against his back. His heart pounded, but he did not lower his head. He had spoken the truth, and the truth had power. He looked up at the council, his eyes blazing. "You fear me not because I lie," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of blades against him. "You fear me because I speak." In that moment, he felt a shift in the air. The alien woman who had visited his home stood at the edge of the chamber. Her eyes locked on him. She did not move, but her presence was like a promise. He was not alone. The crowd raged, the council shouted, but Daniel remained on his knees, his voice echoing in their minds. For the first time, the janitor who had been invisible now stood as a threat, a voice that could not be erased. And as he was dragged from the chamber, he knew the choice he had made would bring danger to him and his daughter, but also hope to all who had been silent for too long. The guards forced Daniel to his knees, their heavy boots pressing against the stone floor, their weapons aimed close enough for him to feel the heat. The chamber burned with noise. Executives shouted, some demanding his death, others arguing, afraid of what would happen if the truth spread outside. Daniel's head throbbed, but he did not close his mouth. He had spoken their secret aloud, and there was no turning back. His daughter's face stayed in his mind, her weak smile and soft cough reminding him why he had chosen truth over silence. Then, in a single moment, the noise died. A command was given, sharp and cold. "Take the child," one of the council members ordered. Daniel's blood froze. The guards beside him shifted, two of them moving quickly toward the door. He struggled against the grip on his shoulders, his voice breaking. "No! Leave her!" But his cries were swallowed by the silence of the hall. They were not only punishing him now, they wanted to break him through his daughter. His body twisted, trying to fight free, but the guards held him tight. A heavy fist slammed into his ribs, knocking the air from his chest. Pain shot through him, but the thought of his daughter in their hands hurt more than any blow. "She has nothing to do with this," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "She is only a child." The golden-ridged executive sneered down at him, his voice dripping with cruelty. "A child is a weapon when it belongs to a rebel. She will remind you to stay silent." Daniel's heart pounded as he watched the guards vanish through the doors. His throat felt like it was closing. But before he could speak again, another voice cut through the chamber. "Enough." It was the alien woman who had defended him before. She rose from her seat, her silver eyes glowing with anger. "You shame yourselves," she said. "To harm a child for fear of a man's words is not power, it is cowardice." The hall trembled with tension. Some hissed at her, demanding she stay silent, but others watched in stillness, their faces unreadable. The woman stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the council. "He is not your enemy," she declared. "He is proof. Proof that humans can learn, adapt, and become more than you believe. If you kill him, you will not kill knowledge. You will make it stronger." Daniel's chest heaved, his ribs aching, but he stared at her with wide eyes. She was risking herself for him, challenging her own kind before the council. The guards hesitated, uncertain of whether to obey the order or follow her. The chamber balanced on the edge of chaos, one breath away from erupting. Then, something unexpected happened. Among the human workers standing at the edges, a voice rose. "He spoke the truth." Another voice followed, louder. "We heard them. We know what he said is real." Soon dozens of humans were shouting, their voices echoing across the dome. For years, they had stayed silent, but Daniel's courage had unlocked their own. Now their cries filled the hall like a wave, drowning the chamber in noise. The council shouted for silence, but the humans did not stop. Even some younger aliens shifted uneasily, their eyes flickering with doubt. Daniel felt the weight of hands on his shoulders loosen as the guards looked around, unsettled by the growing unrest. For the first time, the balance of fear had shifted. The golden-ridged executive roared for order, his voice shaking the crystal walls. "He has poisoned their minds. He must be silenced." He lunged from his seat, pointing a clawed hand at Daniel. "Kill him now!" But before the command could be carried out, the alien woman raised her hand sharply. "Touch him, and you will answer to me." Her words struck like steel. For a long moment, no one moved. The council members glared at one another, their pride and fear twisting their faces. Finally, the order was withdrawn with a hiss, but the warning was clear. Daniel was not free. He was a spark in dry grass, and they feared the fire he might cause. Dragged out of the chamber, Daniel's body ached, but his spirit burned. He had seen the humans rise, heard their voices shout for the first time. That sound gave him strength. But fear still clawed at him. His daughter was in danger. He was taken to a holding cell, its walls of cold stone, its light dim and cruel. Guards paced outside like shadows, waiting for him to break. Hours passed, though Daniel could not tell how many. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, whispering his daughter's name again and again like a prayer. He wondered if she was safe, or if the guards had already taken her far away. The thought crushed him, but he forced himself not to give in. If he broke now, she would be lost. Then came the sound of footsteps. Slow, careful, almost hidden. The door creaked open, and a figure slipped inside. It was her, the silver-eyed woman. She closed the door quickly behind her and crouched down beside him. "Your daughter is safe," she whispered. "I made sure of it, but you must be careful. They will not stop." Relief crashed through him, making his chest ache. His eyes burned with tears he had held back all day. He whispered, "Why are you helping me?" She looked at him with an expression he could not read. "Because truth should not die, and because I have seen enough chains in my life to know they destroy us all." She pressed something small into his hand, a hidden communicator stone, glowing faintly. "When the moment comes, this will guide you. You will not be alone." Her voice dropped even lower. "But you must stay strong. They will test you again. They will try to break you. Do not let them see fear." Before he could answer, she slipped away, leaving him in the shadows with the faint glow of the stone. Daniel sat there, holding it tightly, his heart torn between fear and hope. He had spoken truth, and now it had spread beyond him. His daughter was still in danger, but he was no longer a man forgotten with a mop. He was a voice, and voices, once freed, could not be silenced. The chamber doors slammed open, and Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The air was thick with tension, the metallic scent of the city blending with fear and anticipation. Outside, the alien city pulsed with activity, unaware of the storm brewing inside the executive dome. Daniel stood, his body tense, his mind racing. Today, it would all change. The communicator stone in his pocket vibrated softly, a steady reminder that he was not alone. He clenched his fists, recalling the promises he had made to his daughter and to the humans who now looked up to him. The council had convened again, their faces carved with suspicion and anger. The golden-ridged executive stood at the head, his claws tapping on the crystal surface of the council table. "He will speak," the executive sneered. "But mark my words, he will not leave here alive if he reveals even a fraction of our secrets." Daniel's eyes swept the chamber. He saw guards ready to strike, younger council members shivering with uncertainty, and a few hidden allies who gave him subtle nods. Every second counted. He stepped forward, his voice steady though his chest ached. "I will speak," he said in fluent alien, each word precise and deliberate. The council froze, jaws dropping, the room crackling with disbelief. For weeks, they had underestimated him, seen only a janitor, a single father, someone insignificant. Now he stood before them, fluent in their language, commanding attention. Even the golden-ridged executive's eyes widened with shock. How do you know our tongue?" he stammered. Daniel allowed a small, grim smile. "I have listened, I have learned, and I have seen the truth. You cannot hide what is wrong from the people forever." Whispers rippled through the chamber. The humans, hidden in shadowed corners, peaked with hope. They had never seen such courage in one man, a janitor who had dared to cross their world with nothing but determination and love for his child. He walked slowly down the aisle, each step echoing off the crystal walls, his words flowing clearly. "You call yourselves leaders," he said, eyes locking on the golden-ridged executive. "But leadership is not fear. Leadership is not chains. It is care, it is justice, and it is truth. You have failed your people and your allies, and it is time someone spoke what must be spoken." Some of the younger council members stirred uneasily. They had begun to doubt the authority of their leaders, but they were not ready to act. Daniel's words ignited a fire they could not yet name. The executive's claws flexed, his anger building. "Silence him!" he shouted. Guards surged forward, weapons raised, but Daniel was ready. With a sharp movement, he activated the communicator stone. A soft hum filled the room, invisible shields forming around him and the woman who had helped him. Bullets and energy blasts ricocheted harmlessly off the barrier. Shock rippled through the chamber. The golden-ridged executive hissed, unable to comprehend the technology or the courage before him. Daniel did not falter. "You see," he continued, "even your weapons cannot stop truth when it is shared. Your fear will never protect you. It will destroy you. You have trapped yourselves in lies for too long." He raised his voice, and in perfect alien, he began reciting evidence, documents, eyewitness accounts, and proof of corruption and cruelty. Each word struck like a hammer. The council members shifted uncomfortably as their secrets, once safe, were exposed. Outside the chamber, the city began to stir. The hum of engines, the chatter of citizens, the buzz of flying vehicles, all seemed to pause as a ripple of change spread through the network of communication Daniel had quietly activated. Messages, images, proof, and truth flowed into the public sphere. Citizens saw the council for what it was: frail, corrupt, and frightened. The walls of secrecy cracked. The golden-ridged executive's face twisted in rage, but he could not stop the flood of awareness. Then came the unexpected. The younger council members stepped forward, their voices rising in support of Daniel. "He speaks the truth," one said, eyes meeting Daniel's. "We cannot hide this anymore. We must act." Others followed. The room that had been filled with fear and rigid control now pulsed with the uncertain energy of rebellion. Daniel's heart raced. This was the moment he had fought for, the moment where his courage became a spark for others. The silver-eyed woman stood at his side, unwavering, her presence a shield of both hope and defiance. She whispered, "Stay calm, lead them, but do not falter." Daniel nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility. He had begun as a janitor, cleaning floors and wiping away dirt, invisible to everyone. Now he was a leader, a voice, a force that could change not just one city, but the lives of countless beings. He looked toward the exit, knowing that soon he would see his daughter again. The thought fueled him, giving his words power. "We will not live in fear," he continued. "We will not bow to lies. From this moment, we reclaim our freedom, our truth, and our dignity. Those who hide behind walls of deceit will fall. Those who act with courage will rise." His words echoed through the chamber and into the city beyond, carried on communication waves, whispered in corridors, spoken aloud by workers who had once hidden their voices. The golden-ridged executive screamed in fury, but his power had diminished. His allies turned away, unwilling to share his rage, uncertain of where to stand. Daniel's presence, his courage, and his mastery of their language had shifted the tide. Guards who had once held him down now lowered their weapons, unsure whom to obey. The chamber was no longer theirs. It belonged to truth. As the session ended, Daniel walked toward the door, his chest still aching from tension, but burning with triumph. Outside, his daughter ran to him, eyes wide with joy and relief. He scooped her up, holding her close, feeling the warmth of life and hope return to his soul. Citizens cheered from the streets, their voices uniting with his own, creating a chorus of change. The janitor nobody saw had become a symbol, a spark, and a hero. He looked around at the alien woman who had protected him, the humans who had found their courage, and the younger council members who had chosen truth over fear. A new chapter had begun. No longer invisible, no longer silenced, Daniel had proven that a single man, armed with courage, love, and a commitment to truth, could challenge an empire. And in that moment, he realized that the janitor who swept floors had become the voice that could not be ignored, the hero who inspired a world to rise.